SPAGS. Is he going to be in Kansas City in 2026, or will he be gone to another team as a head coach? That's today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
And welcome back to another episode of Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you for making this your first listen, and thank you for making this the number one sports podcast network in the United States. We truly do appreciate that. It is a huge thing for us. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Lot to talk about. We talked about Matt Nagy yesterday. We're going to talk about Steve Spagnuolo today. Is he going to be elsewhere, or will he be back in Kansas City? That is going to be the big question. We're going to get into that a little bit here in just a moment. What would it look like if he does leave and they have to find somebody to replace him, and who could it be? That's going to be something that we're going to be talking about a little bit later. I am Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. This is my partner in crime, Ryan Tracy from RGR Football and NFL33.com. And we have been doing this for 9 seasons. And as I said on yesterday's show, this is kind of new to us. Like, yeah, they've lost coordinators. They've lost, a couple of coaches here and there. Not making the playoffs. This is new. Like, we have not experienced that. So we're in a different scenario right now. But the reality is that the Chiefs there is potential for the Chiefs to lose both coordinators. Both Ryan and I think that Nagy is for sure gone, and they will be replacing the offensive coordinator. So the question becomes, do they lose both in one offseason? What say you, sir?
Until last night, I thought Steve Spagnuolo was more than likely one of the top 2 candidates to get the Giants job. I thought a homecoming was on the radar. I've talked to several people in the market that do believe that there is a kinship, a love there for Steve Spagnuolo. The unforeseen, at least by my eyes and a number of people that I've talked to, firing of John Harbaugh changes that completely. John Harbaugh and what he's been able to do is earth-shaking in terms of the canopy here of what is going to happen under this circus tent for coaching changes this year. I think it throws the whole thing into upheaval, to tell you the truth. And I do think that the Giants are a team that, much like back to the Bill Parcells days, really want somebody straightforward, tough-nosed, somebody that demands respect, not somebody that's out there trying to earn it. So I think the younger coaches are actually at a disadvantage as head coaches in New York. But Steve Spagnuolo is not a young coach. So I do think there's still a possibility there. We've not had a time confirmed for the Giants interview, which we do understand is still probably planned unless they meet with Harbaugh first, and we're waiting on details for that. But it is confirmed that Steve Spagnuolo is going to interview with the Tennessee Titans as well. And much like we talked about yesterday, this is Mike Borgonzi going back to the well of the players, the people, and everything that he knows. And his experience in Kansas City brings him to trying to pilfer as much as he can from the Kansas City Chiefs. And we'll talk later, after we get past this coaching circus here, we'll talk about players and who Mike Borgonzi probably wants to come after. And we'll probably look to sign in free agency if they're there, and maybe even more earth-shaking deals. I think this is just the start. But I feel like it's a better match for the young quarterback in Tennessee to be Matt Nagy. So I think both of these guys, Spags is probably a bit behind, at least from where I'm hearing right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I never expected Harbaugh to be gone. So to have him gone and to have him be out in Baltimore after 18 seasons, you look at the Giants and you look at how that franchise has run for the last couple of years, and Brian Daboll was the head coach for a long time and just never really quite successful. I just don't know that you're going to want to go with the guy that doesn't have a ton of experience as a head coach, because to me, it makes a ton of sense. Like, Harbaugh could step in, and it sounds like from everything I've seen, Harbaugh maybe even wants to bring some of his assistants from the Baltimore Ravens with him. So it almost sounds like he would actually have guys ready for a staff in New York. It just kind of seems like that would make a ton of sense. And the interesting thing to me in that regard is that if you're going to New York, you have a young QB there too, and you're going to give him a defensive-minded head coach. That's a little bit different and a little curious, in my opinion.
I will say this, though, that the sheer audacity that is Jackson Dart, I think, demands a little bit less of a quarterback whisperer. He's played for Lane Kiffin, right? He's played for what is, I think, a team that is already culminated around him. I think he needs maybe more restraint than he needs a kick in the butt. You know what I mean? So I do think that there's an aspect there that I think the situations are much different, to tell you the truth. So in the end, I think Steve Spagnuolo is a viable candidate. I don't think his chances are getting a head coaching role are as good today as they were yesterday.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that, and you start looking at it, and you start looking also another one. I think, what is there, 7 coaching opportunities right now? I think in the NFL as we're recording this right now. Technically, I think that there's probably really an 8th, because it sounds like Miami is looking perhaps to get rid of Mike McDaniel at some point.
Not according to Mike.
Well, not according to Mike, right? But it does sound like one of the things that they're talking about in the interview is, what would you do if it wasn't Mike McDaniel as your head coach? So it is possible Miami will be looking for another head coach. I don't think that really fits Spagnuolo either, though. So I still think that in this scenario, it's probably really a New York situation or bust for him, which likely leans to him staying in Kansas City. But we have other things to talk about. And what would it look like if he does get the New York job?
Yeah. Or if he doesn't, there's plenty here that can go around. So I think, honestly, this decision will have a cascade of change for the Kansas City Chiefs, even though this defense has a lot of experience at it.
Yeah. And it's going to be something to definitely take a look at. When we get back, we're going to talk about what it could look like if Spagnuolo does get a head coaching job in New York. That's coming up next.
Nobody knows your money goals better than you. Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do, locking in every opening, beating your PR, and beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and EFTs, options, futures, and crypto all in one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more from your money. Get started today at robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move.
So what happens if Spagnuolo does get the job in New York or in Tennessee? I guess it's possible that he could get a job in Tennessee, or if he takes another job that we don't even know that he could be getting an interview for right now. What would happen for the Chiefs? What would it look like, and how could they make some changes on defense for this season?
I think there could be a lot of changes, to tell you the truth. Matt and I discussed some about more augmenting what is already here, but there could be wholesale changes. One thing I will tell you this, I think that you have to explore somebody who's a little bit more multiple, somebody that has the ability to, I think, lock things down a little bit. Really interesting study was done this week. Shout out to Cody. The most diverse and therefore inconsistent as well defensive play call in the league. Steve Spagnuolo, by far, Chiefs number one in the variety of shells, deployments, and disguises that they run. I think that puts an undue strain on some of, especially when you have to run young players at some key positions. I think the mental rigor that takes is somewhat challenging. So I don't know that you can get somebody that can come in and run the same system. I don't want somebody that's a retread that's failed somewhere else. So Matt Eberflus, sorry, not interested. I do think it offers you an opportunity to go find somebody like a Gannon or Raheem Morris, who are both out there right now and don't seem to be getting the head coaching traction. I think that's an opportunity to go find someone that can come in and honestly shift things a little bit. Both those candidates in particular like to run a 3-man front. And if you switch to a 3-4, there's different possibilities about what this defense could become. And there's a myriad more options in the next draft and the next draft and the next draft.
It's interesting you talk about that, because one of the other things that could actually cause, and we'll get into personnel a little bit later, but that would actually make it more likely if they did move to a 3-4 that you bring back a guy like Leo Chenal, because that's more like what he would be fitting. That's what he really should be playing. The other thing that I think when you start looking at this and how this could play out, I agree with you. I think that Spagnuolo and his variety of defenses causes issues with younger players. You have to wonder, did that cause a issue with getting a guy like Christian Fulton on the field? Did that cause an issue with getting a guy like Jaden Hicks on the field? Like, that to me is, I think, the bigger thing when you start looking at that. But I have another guy that I would throw out. What about Merritt?
I think Dave Merritt is one of the internal candidates for sure. I don't know that he is interested in it. He seems very, very happy to run his secondary, stay in what is his area of expertise, sit back, smoke a cigar, do the thing. I wonder if that's really in his repertoire of goals.
I almost disagree with you, just because I think one of the reasons that he was okay being where he is because he wanted to keep his kids where they were. And I think that plays into it way more than necessarily he doesn't want to be a defensive coordinator. He just didn't want to risk taking another job and having to move his family to do it. So to me, if he did want to be a defensive coordinator I think that would be an interesting pickup for the Chiefs to bring him in. The defense obviously loves him from everything I've ever seen, and it would be a lot of the same, but it would still be a little bit different because he would have his own different approach to things.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that Andy Reid likes to do that. Whether that means as much on the defensive side as it does on the offensive side, I'm not sure. But I think Dave Merritt has earned at least a hard look. And if he is interested in then possibly that role, because when you look back at some of the position groups that have outperformed what we originally thought that they would do, most of the time it's been the secondary.
Yep. Yeah, and he's done a fantastic job with the secondary. You can look at all the players that have gone on and done and made this team what it is and got them to the point where, I mean, look at the fact that, go back to the Trent McDuffie draft. You draft, 4 DBs in that draft, and you have all of them still on the team right now? 5?
Yeah, there's a ton. 5.
Yeah. And you still have all of them on the team. Well, obviously the season's over, so they're not all still on the team, but quite literally, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, Josh Williams, Brian Cook, and Najee Johnson. You're right. There were 5, all of them on the team, all in one draft, and they played in 3 straight Super Bowls. This will be the year
that says a lot.
They will not play in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. And that's an achievement.
Sorry.
And honestly, in a league where passing is now the default, to have your secondary together for that long, to have everybody on a rookie contract and have everybody for more or less survive to the point where you stay on the roster. I know Najee Johnson, Josh Williams haven't played a whole lot lately, but they're here and they're viable. And I think that says not only that the front office is able to evaluate pre-draft players that fit the scheme for Dave Merritt and Steve Spagnuolo, but that Dave Merritt is able to coach them up and lead that development phase. And that's what's key.
Yeah. And to be able to do that, and that's the big question when you start looking at how this is going to play out for 2026, in my opinion, is when you start looking at who your coordinator is going to be. If it's not Steve Spagnuolo, how does that change who you're going to go out and draft? How does that change who you're going to try to bring back that's a potential free agent, and who you'd want to be bringing in that's a free agent? That all is going to be determined by who your coordinator is and who your positional coaches are, which is something that is going to probably change if it's not Spags back in 2026.
Yeah, it is the first domino to fall, not the last. There are other guys around the league that could come in and make some changes. I do feel maybe more so on the defensive side that if Spagnuolo takes a job and there's a change of scheme, meaning the front, I do think that means more wholesale changes for maybe everybody but Dave Merritt on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, because you're changing the style and how you're going to be playing defense in general. I mean, it will change the back end to an extent, but not near as much as it will change the front seven.
Yeah, it's a different skill set. And most coaches, linebacker coaches can coach linebackers, no matter what scheme you play in. Defensive line coaches can coach defensive line, but there are guys that have specific tendencies. And I do think one of the things that has been maybe at odds is that Joe Cullen likes to run a three-man front too. That's what he did in Jacksonville. And I do think that there are some incongruities with this staff currently. But again, it's not that there's not capability there. It's that it's just not the optimum of what they would do had they had their druthers.
Well, and you look at that and you talk about, bringing in a guy that runs a 3-4. Joe Cullen ran a 3-4 as a defensive end. I mean, as a defensive line coach, that actually would play into his skill set better than what he's doing right now. And from what I've heard, it seems like the Chiefs' defensive line, for the most part, likes Joe Cullen. So in some ways, you would think that there would be continuity there and that could help. Though, of all the positional groups on this roster, the one that absolutely needs to be overhauled the most is your defensive line.
Yes,
by far.
And we are going to get to the players next week as we hopefully have a little bit more shakeout from the coaching changes. But there is a ton there, and it will be specific to the scheme. That will change what the needs are as we go into free agency and the draft as well.
Yep. So when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about who it could be, who the Chiefs could be looking at, and what it could mean for this defense. That's coming up next.
Card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get into the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Super easy. Each game day, you'll just see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts onto it every time. You can apply it anytime you get into the bet and the ones that you like the most. Open this profit boost pack first thing on game day, and you'll see what boosts you have to apply. You can put them wherever you want. It gives you more juice on the bets that you already like instead of forcing you into doing something new or betting something different. Make your picks, then apply the profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit at FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day.
Let's be real. Managing your finances can feel overwhelming. Between subscriptions you forgot about, bills that keep going up, and trying to figure out where all your money actually goes each month, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. And who has time to track every transaction or hunt down hidden fees? That's where Rocket Money comes in. The personal finance app that helps you take control. It finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. I was shocked when Rocket Money showed me some subscriptions that I was still paying for that I thought I canceled a long time ago, and I completely forgot about them. It's already saved me some money. The automatic transaction categorization is a game changer. I can finally see exactly where my money is going each month. You can set budgets and goals, get personalized insights, and receive real-time alerts for large transactions, upcoming bills, and low balances. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join rocketmoney.com/lockedon. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Kind of talked about this a little bit in the last segment, but let's go into it a little bit deeper. Who could it be, and how does it really change the defense if they do decide to go a different direction, or if they end up having to go a different direction, I guess I should say?
Yes, this brings to mind a Australian rock band from the 80s. Who could it be now? And that's the big question is, if Spags is to take a job outside of Kansas City, then it is up to Andy Reid to decide, okay, do I want to stay with the personnel that I already have and stay in a similar front system? Do I want somebody that does something a little bit different on the back end? Does that mean that I have to change out the entire staff? Do I want to go to something that's a little bit more athletic? And the 3-4 front is generally considered a more athletic front with bigger defensive linemen, more linebackers on the field in base, something that allows them to go from what is a 3-4 base look into a nickel very easily. You can go dime very easily. It's less changes. It's, I think, something that just like the run game is a pendulum, right? In the league, it comes and it goes. I think the athleticism needed for a league now that is on average getting the ball out more than a quarter second faster than it did 5 years ago. I think the speed element in the front seven is even more important this time around, as the pendulum is way over here on this side about speed and quickness.
Well, and you start looking at this defense and you start looking at how it's going to play and how they have all the different things that they need to make changes on. And we talked about in the last segment, defensive line is probably the one that they need to overhaul the most. Switching to a 3-4 in that regard isn't going to hurt you near as much because you're in a situation where you're having to rehaul everything anyway. So it's not going to be as big of a deal. But when you start backing it up, what I will say, when you start looking at the front seven, which is really what you're talking about, where the main change is going to be is on your front seven. Your highest paid player other than Chris Jones is going to be Nick Bolton, at least as it sits right now. He can play in a 3-4. I have no question in my mind he can play in a 3-4. I think he would be fine in the 3-4. But you have other issues. You would have other issues at the linebacker position that you'd have to get figured out.
Well, you'd have to change types because Leo Chenal is also a 3-4 inside linebacker.
Yep.
Can he function as a pass rusher? Probably. But they would put Leo back to his Wisconsin days and what he did a lot, having the patrol between the A and B gaps. And I love that concept. So it changes because your outside linebackers are not so much a Will and a Sam anymore. They're pass rushers, and they need to be. But it changes the thing. This draft class is very heavily slanted towards 3-4 outside linebacker pass rushers rather than 4-3 ends. You look at the experiment with Josh Uche. He's a 3-4 outside linebacker type. Didn't work in SPAG's system. So it allows you to get a little bit quicker, a little bit more athletic. I think Steve Spagnuolo is an excellent, elite, like top 3 defensive coordinators in this league. There's no reason to go away from him other than he wants to leave. And so that's the only reason that this is even a theory. But it would allow you to make the personnel fit the game a little bit better.
Yeah, and question on that really quick on Spagnuolo. Future Hall of Famer, in your opinion?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
What he did to Tom Brady all by itself.
Yeah, pretty much. I do think he is a future Hall of Fame coach. When you start looking at this, and we kind of already talked about this to an extent. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but we will talk about personnel a little bit more next week. But this also puts you in a perspective of, Tranquil isn't going to have a job if they want to switch to a 3-4. That's not going to be a position he's going to be able to fill and fit. So he's going to be gone, which I think he could be gone anyway if Spag stays, because I do think that they need to make some changes. And I don't think he played necessarily that great this season. When you look at it, though, it's going to be a situation where you have to get the wholesale changes you're going to have to do at the defensive line position is going to be something that's not going to be able to be done in an off season, especially not one that you're sitting here $50 million over the salary cap right now and only 7 draft picks. That's a major problem. And you hinted at something earlier. I'm not going to see if I want to see if you'll actually say what you were hinting at with some shocking potential trades to a Tennessee Titan team.
This is real simple, especially on this side of the ball, especially if you interview Spags and you offer him a job, God forbid he takes it in Tennessee, they're coming for Chris Jones. I'm going to tell you that right now. They have cap space. They need someone else to put with Jeff Simmons. Like, that would make Tennessee's front impressive from the get-go. Yes. And in a division that I think that they could then jump up into taking. And especially if Spags goes, I think that's absolutely it. The tricky part is Steve Spagnuolo interviews somewhere, does not get an offer, gets an offer he doesn't really want to take, and just decides to stick it out and stay in Kansas City where he has his system in place. He's well advanced. You know what I mean? Like, he isn't instructing and installing and developing it as much as he did the first 3 or 4 seasons, right? It's there. So that is attractive as well. I do think that makes the whole thing more complex, but I think I said it in my latest piece on NFL 33. Prepare for the exodus of players from Kansas City to Tennessee. Nashville, get ready for some ex-Chiefs.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised even if Spagnuolo doesn't go, if Chris Jones is traded. I still think when we get into talking about roster building and you start looking at his salary cap number, one of the things that made the Patriots so great with Tom Brady is they started to let go of players before they fell off a cliff. And I'm not saying Chris Jones is going to fall off a cliff, but he didn't play as good as his contract says he should have played this year. And there are people questioning whether it was effort or it's his ability. Say what you want. He is guaranteed money in 2026, so they can't just cut him. They can technically, I guess, but it would be absolutely cost prohibitive to just cut him. Yeah, trading is a whole different scenario. So I do think that there's a possibility that happens. And if you trade Chris Jones, and I'll get wild here for a moment, because we're still not talking personnel, but this goes into scheme and how you would rebuild to possibly do a 3-4. If you trade Chris Jones and you trade Trent McDuffie, you're in a scenario where you probably have enough picks to go and make a switch to a 3-4 in one season.
Maybe, but you'll have to pick me up off the floor. I
I
don't want to live in a world where neither of them is a Chief.
I don't either, but the reality is Trent McDuffie worth $25 million a year? Because I think that's what he is going to be asking for, based on where he is right now, and based on the contracts that are out there. And everybody was giving a little bit of a discount because they signed early.
True. I think that's the top end of the range that I feel is acceptable, because even if he is at this point maybe best suited for the nickel after the season that he had, he can still play outside against 80% of the teams in this league. So that makes him that valuable.
Fair enough. And maybe they do. Maybe they're able to get a deal done. But the problem is like you have other guys. Like I said, they're $50 million of a salary cap. We're going to have a lot to talk about when we start getting into personnel, how that's going to get affected with all of this. But the reality is you're going to have to make some changes. And I'm not going to be surprised if there's a lot of the guys that we're starting this year that aren't in Kansas City in 2026. Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie could be among them. We already kind of talked about Tranquil. I would add in another guy in Mike Dana. I don't think definitely wouldn't have a position, in my opinion, if they switched to a 3-4. So I could see him being gone, but he could be gone anyway at this point. There's lots of questions when you start looking at the personnel and what they're going to have to do. The biggest question mark right now when you start looking at the defensive side of the ball is who's your coordinator going to be. And I'm hoping by this time next week, they know it's going to be Spagnuolo, or they've at least got somebody in mind that they're going to go hire if Spagnuolo got a head coaching job. I
agree. Let's keep our fingers crossed, folks, and stay with us, because we'll have you all next week and the week after that and the week after that and the week after that.
A lot of roster building we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks. I cannot wait, because we haven't had the chance to talk like this ever in our tenure as hosts of the show. Thank you all for listening today. We really do truly appreciate it. And go check out our Everydayer Club. It gets you access to our Everydayer Discord. I am on there and talking to everybody. Actually had a couple of people talk about the OC job a couple of days ago. That was a lot of fun. Thank you all for listening today, and we will be back next week.